another edition of the Mission Ready Men briefing on the SHR Media Network. Today is Thursday, February 20th, the year of our Lord 2025. And Hamas is evil, and must be destroyed. They must be destroyed. And we'll get into that. Trump and Elon did a joint interview with Hannity on Fox, and there was some interesting things took place there. And one of the things that we'll get into is the point they made about Social Security and things like that. But we got that. We got a ton to get to. We got the COVID. One of the faces of the COVID era finally admitting something that we all knew, and we will definitely get into that. But before we do, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, share these videos. We want to thank you for joining us here on the SHR Media Network. We're seeing some really good growth. So the prayers that you've been sending up have been working. So continue to do that. We really appreciate that. And as far as Mission Ready Men, you can find us here on all the socials at Mission Ready Men on Facebook, Instagram, X. We're actually going live on X right now and a few other places. Truth Social, and to a lesser extent, TikTok. All right, let's get after it. We got a ton to get into, so let's get after it. There are a ton of wins stacking up, and we don't have time to get into everything. One of the biggest ones is that Trump has declared a number of the most prominent cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And a lot of people I saw when they reacted were upset that that meant there were going to be drone strikes on U.S. soil. It's just so ridiculous, because Tren de Aragua was one of the entities that was designated as a foreign terrorist organization, and we all know they famously taken over buildings and neighborhoods and things like that. And so some of these people, fairly well-known people, suggested that means the president will try to initiate drone strikes on those locations inside the United States. It's just so ridiculous. It's barely worth mentioning, but these are the types of people that we're dealing with. And so if there is a need for some intervention, well, there is need for intervention. It's not going to be drone strikes. They're going to send the military into those locations and get them out that way. The drone strikes, if they end up being implemented, will be implemented in Mexico. And I guarantee that when he did this, there was some discussion with the president of Mexico, and that was authorized. I guarantee it. There's no way that the president of Mexico wouldn't authorize that. There's no way he would unilaterally do that to an ally unless there was some sort of an agreement. So to suggest otherwise is just silliness. But yeah, the wins are just stacking up, and we're going to get into a lot more of them the next time we're together. But I wanted to get into the Bibas family in Israel. They were famously kidnapped on October 7th. The husband was returned a few weeks ago. He was released, and this morning, Shiri, Kafir, and Ariel Bibas were their bodies were released. They did not survive. And Hamas is trying to say that they were killed in an airstrike by Israel. I suppose that's possible, but I don't believe anything that Hamas says, nor should you, because they lie, and they're proven liars. They use, and the reason why it's possible is because they do use civilians and hostages as human shields against Israeli airstrikes and incursions and things like that. So it is possible, and whether it's true or not, the people who are blaming Benjamin Netanyahu are just way off base, because that would not have happened had they not been kidnapped by Hamas to begin with. I don't understand how people think that Israel is the bad guy in this scenario. Even if an airstrike did inadvertently kill the Beavis family, Israel is not the bad guy. Whether you start with October 7th or go back through the history of the conflict between Israel and the jihadists over there, from 1948 when they declared their independence, to the Six-Day War in 1967, 1973 and the Yom Kippur War, 82 and 2006 when the first and second Lebanon wars happened, up till October 7th. If Israel were to stop fighting, Israel would cease to exist. If Hamas and the rest of the jihadists stopped attacking Israel, there would be peace. It's that simple. So to suggest that Israel is somehow the bad guy in this scenario is just way off base. And just to illustrate the point, Hamas, they basically paraded the coffins of the Beavis family and another one of their kidnapped victims. When they released them to the Red Cross, there was a parade where they were celebrating. And there's a picture. They had them up. They had the coffins up on stage. It's really ridiculous. I'm not going to show you the videos of that, but they had a parade, and they had the coffins up on stage, and they had a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu on the backdrop as a vampire teeth and blood streaming from the teeth onto pictures of the Beavis family. It's disgusting stuff, really disgusting stuff. And here's a story in the Telegraph: Israel enraged by Hamas monsters after coffin parade. And this doesn't have any pictures, but and this is going to be in the show notes, so you can read it for yourself. But Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to eliminate the Palestinian fighters after the coffins assumed to contain the bodies of Sherry, Beavis, Ariel, and Kafir, and 85-year-old Oded Lifitz. Their coffins were presented on stage in Khan Yunis in central Gaza. And that was where they signed agreements with the Red Cross, and the Red Cross picked up the coffins and took them back to Israel. This is sick stuff. This is absolutely sick stuff. And as I said in the beginning, Hamas is evil, and they must be destroyed. Their charter calls for the elimination of the state of Israel. Israel has no choice, I don't think, but to destroy Hamas, to completely eliminate it. And that's going to cause a lot of friction in the global community because pretty much everybody hates Israel. And so they had this proportional response nonsense that they were talking about right after October 7th. No other country in the world would respond proportionally if something like that happened. No other country would. And now that they've returned the bodies of these of this family and this other elderly gentleman, and it's not on October 7th, they killed Sherry's parents, killed Sherry. Eventually, they kidnapped her, and Kafir and Ariel. So 3 generations of the family gone. This is what Hamas wants. This is Hamas's goal, and they will try to do it one family at a time. So Israel has no choice but to eliminate Hamas, eliminate all of the jihadists in the region. That's the only way there's going to be peace. Because as I said, Israel lays down their arms, Israel stops fighting, Israel ceases to exist. Everyone else stops fighting, and there's peace. If they don't completely eliminate Hamas, don't completely eliminate the jihadists, this is going to be unending, and there won't be an end to it. There will not be an end to it. Israel will constantly be defending itself, and Hamas will, or whatever entity it ends up taking over, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, whatever jihadist group rises to prominence, they're going to keep coming. All right, I want to get to something a little lighter in tone, and that is the joint interview that Elon Musk and President Trump did with Sean Hannity, and there was 40 minutes long. There wasn't a lot of breaking news. There wasn't a lot of really wow moments. I think there probably could have been if maybe, I don't know, Tucker Carlson or Megyn Kelly or Joe Rogan had done the interview. Sean Hannity is, he's not my favorite. He hasn't been one of my favorites since when he was doing Hannity and Combs way back in the day. That show was good, and he was good then. And right after they broke off, he was okay. But then I don't know what happened; he just went downhill. But anyway, the interview was good. I mean, Trump and Elon and their chemistry kind of made it what it was. They were like two bros. They're both, Elon's in his 50s and President Trump is almost 80, but it just had that kind of that bro energy, which was fun to watch. But one of the big things that came out of that was Elon describing Trump derangement syndrome, and he described it perfectly. I never would have thought of it this way, but he described it absolutely perfectly. So let's take a look at it. There's a few clips of it I want to show you, but here's one of them, and this is just this is just funny.
Yeah, I used to be adored by the left.
Yeah, not anymore.
Less so these days.
He killed that, huh?
I mean, less so.
I really did it.
Well, I mean, this whole sort of like, They call it like Trump derangement syndrome. And I didn't, you don't realize how real this is until like you can't reason with people. So like I was at a friend's birthday party, like just a birthday dinner, and it was like a nice, quiet dinner, and everyone was behaving normally. And then I happened to mention, this is before the election, like a month or two before, I happened to mention the president's name. And it was like they got shot with a dart in the jugular that contained like methamphetamine and rabies. Okay, and they're like, wow. And I'm like, what is wrong? Like, guys, like, you just can't have like a normal conversation.
No, you can't. You cannot have a normal conversation with these people. Even before COVID, which we're going to get into a little bit later, I lost what I thought were friends, which obviously they weren't, because of politics. People who, up until a certain period of time, and it has to do with Obama. Up until then, we would have all kinds of political discussions and disagreements and debates, and it was all fun. We were all having a good time. We would all just agree to disagree at the end of the night, but it was cool. And then that guy came along and just blew everything up. And of course, now with President Trump, that has just ramped up to an astonishing level. And Trump derangement syndrome, regardless of what you think of it, whether or not you think it's a thing, it is definitely a thing. And the people who suffer from it, they just don't get it, and they don't get that they don't get it. But another key point that I wanted to bring up is their desire, their emphasis on trying to restore, as Elon says, restore the will of the people. So let's take a look at that.
What all we're really trying to do here is restore the will of the people through the president. And what we're finding is that there's an unelected bureaucracy. Speaking of unelected, there's a vast federal bureaucracy that is implacably opposed to the president and the cabinet. And you look at, say, DC voting, it's 92% Kamala. Okay, so we're in 92% Kamala. That's a lot.
They don't like me here either.
I think about that number a lot. I'm like 92%. That's basically almost everyone.
Yeah.
And so, but how can you, if the will of the president is not implemented, and the president is representative of the people, that means the will of the people is not being implemented, and that means we don't live in a democracy. We live in a bureaucracy. And so, I think what we're seeing here is the thrashing of the bureaucracy as we try to restore democracy and people.
Absolutely. He is 100% correct. The will of the people, and I believe, and I think a lot of people believe, that the will of the people was subverted in 2020. Because I believe President Trump won that election. I believe it was stolen. And I know people are going to call me crazy, call me conspiracy theorist, call me whatever. But the fact remains, well, at least my assertion remains that President Trump won. There is absolutely no way anyone convinced me. No way. You would have to count every one of those votes in front of me for me to believe that 81 million people, not 81 million votes cast, 81 million people voted for Joe Biden in 2020. I don't believe it. I refuse to believe it. Prove it to me. And I don't think they can. I don't think, and it's over and done at this point. They messed up royally by doing that, because now we have Trump 2.0 in 2025, and he is just letting it rip. Whereas if they had let him if they had let the will of the people go, chances are some of the things that he's doing now, he would not feel the need. He would not have felt the need to do in such a bold fashion then, and they'd have been done. And there's a really good possibility, bad possibility, depending on your point of view, that Republicans would not have won this time around had they allowed Trump to stay in office in 2020. So I'm thankful. I'm thankful that they did what they did at this point. I'm very thankful, and I am so looking forward to stacking more wins. But one last thing I wanted to get to on this Trump Elon interview was something that this is something that people who pay attention to this already knew, but it's just refreshing to hear somebody in power, in a position of influence, actually say it. And let's see where to go. Here we go. So let's take a look at this one.
The overall goal is to try to get $1 trillion out of the deficit. And if the deficit is not brought under control, America will go back. This is a very important thing for people to understand. A country is no different from an individual in that if an individual overspends, an individual can go bankrupt, and it's kind of country. And the massive waste, fraud, and abuse that has been going on, which is leading to a $2 trillion a year deficit. That's what the president was handed on Jan 20th, a $2 trillion deficit.
Look at
it's
the
insane.
scroll of all this.
For this fiscal year.
Yeah, we inherited.
Yeah.
And inflation is back. I'm only here for 2.5 weeks.
That was January.
Inflation
We were
is
there for a
back.
week.
Now think of it. Inflation's back. And they said, oh, Trump, inflation. I had nothing to do with it. These people have run the country. They spent money like nobody's ever spent. They were given $9 trillion to throw out the window. $9 trillion. And they spent it on the Green New scam, I call it. It's the greatest scam in the history of the country. One of them.
It really is. It really is. But yeah, Trump and Elon, I think, are whatever you think of Elon Musk, in terms of his business prowess, in terms of his genius, and the things that he's contributed to this country up to now, I think are. I don't think there's anything that we can really compare it to. He's never been a conservative, and I still don't think he is a conservative. He has some questionable views on some things, and obviously he's what's the word I'm looking for? But let's just say he's doing his best to populate the world all by himself. He's got 13 kids by a few different women. So he's not somebody that you look up to in that regard. But just in terms of his contributions, and you have to be able to separate a person's contributions from their personal failings. I think I don't think you can. You can't take everybody in totality and say, okay, this guy is bad because he did X, Y, and Z, even though the good things he did, A, B, and C, he's still a bad guy. He may be, but he contributed A, B, and C, and A, B, and C have been an overall good for the country, the business, whatever the case may be. You have to be able to separate the two, and the left refuses to allow anyone to do that when it comes to conservatives anyway. I mean, just look at Bill Clinton. Compare Bill Clinton and President Trump. Yes, President Trump has had his share of womanizing. So did Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton did it in the Oval Office. And Bill Clinton has a reputation for some other things, but that didn't care. They didn't care about that. Character only matters because now we're talking about a Republican. So that's where I come down on that. But so I'm looking forward, like I said, to stacking up the wins, and it's only been a month. It's been 30 days, 30 days, and we're just stacking win after win after win after win, and I'm good with it. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. All right. Let's before we move on, I want to get into into some Christian manhood stuff. But before we do that, I do want to get a word in from our sponsor, and our sponsor today is my beautiful wife's company, Carry Girl Gear. And Valentine's Day has come and gone, but check out Carry Girl Gear for some of the coolest designs and the highest quality shirts that you can find anywhere. Excuse me. There's drinkware, there's hats, there's all kinds of other accessories that that your wife or girlfriend would absolutely love. And fellas, if you are challenged in terms of knowing sizes, knowing tastes, just go ahead and get a gift certificate. Just go ahead and get a gift certificate and let her pick out her own stuff. You'll thank me. You'll thank me later. And you won't have to worry about returns. You won't have to worry about any of that stuff if she picks out her own gear. So I know that might not work for everyone, but I encourage you to check it out. Visit carrygirl.com today. All right. I have said a number of times since the election that America is back. We are back. In fact, I think one of the episodes was titled "We Are So Back," and I think that's true. I think that's true. During a period of time like we had the past 4 years, oftentimes people will turn to God and ask Him for help out of certain situations, help getting out of debt, help getting out of a financial crisis, help getting out of a health crisis. And a lot of times it's only because things get so bad that they do that. And then as soon as things seem like they're turning around, they go right back into their old patterns. They feel like, well, God did His job. God did what He was supposed to do, and now I'm just going to go back to doing what I want to do. That's not how it works. That is not how it works. God is not our butler. Okay? He's not. He wants to give us all the things that we desire. The Bible says that he wants to give us all those things, but we can't just one day say, "Hey God, I want to do this. Give me this. Give me that." And then if somehow those things actually happen, and you say, "Okay, thanks. I'll see you later." No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. If you're in, you have to go all in. When I was sick, and people who follow me know the story, but when I was sick, I asked God to heal me, and I would spend the rest of my life serving Him if He allowed that to happen. And so here I am. I got healed. And I kept that promise. Ecclesiastes 5:4 says, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. Better to not vow than to vow and not pay. If you say that I mean that's true for anyone, right? If you say you're going to do something for somebody, do it. And if you say you're going to do something for somebody and then don't do it, well then that person is going to have a much lower opinion of you. Now, God doesn't work that way. He loves us. But the fact remains that if we tell him that we're going to serve him, then we better serve him. If you want to have that relationship with him, then you have to do your part. And your part is believing in him, believing that he died for our sins, rose from the dead, and then declare that faith. And then it's just a matter of building that relationship with him, walking with him, reading the Bible so you can understand him and understand what he has in store for us. Being a Christian and submitting to God, though, doesn't make your life perfect. It's far from it. A lot of times that will cause some problems, especially with family, with friends, with jobs, with relationships. Because if you're a Christian and you're doing what God wants you to do, that's going to cause some conflict. People are going to hate you. Jesus said, they hated me too. They hated me first. And so that's gonna happen. So submitting to God and doing what he wants you to do is, like I said, it's not going to make your life perfect. We're flawed people. We're flawed creatures, and working on those flaws takes time. If there was a traumatic event that caused you to turn to, even if it didn't cause you to, in a traumatic event, whether it's an injury or some type of whatever the case may be, it's going to take time to heal that trauma. It's going to take time to recover from that injury. And so submitting to God is not going to instantly, miraculously cause you to be healed. And you're never going to be perfect. But what you will be is happy. You will be content, especially if you're doing what God would have you to do. If you're at least trying to do what God would have you to do. If you're going to him and allowing him to direct your steps, you will be happy and you will be fulfilled, happier than you could ever possibly imagine, just trying to do it on your own. And like I said, things in your life are not going to miraculously get fixed. Miracles do happen. Miracles still do happen. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but it's true. I am living proof. But if you expect big, spectacular miracles every day, and that your life is going to be a cakewalk, you'd be mistaken. But you have the ultimate companion in the Lord Jesus Christ with you to help you navigate those things and to make sure that those crooked places are made straight, as the Bible says. And to bring it back to current events, you would be mistaken to think that Trump getting elected, especially if that's what you prayed for, like I did, but you'd be mistaken in thinking that Trump getting elected is a panacea, is just going to instantly make things better. It's going to take time. It's going to take time for him to fix everything that Biden and his puppeteers destroyed. It's going to take time. It's not, like I said, it's not a panacea. It's not instantly going to make everything better. So if you were praying for Trump to win, like I was, and you're seeing all of these wins stack up, and happy that all these wins are stacking up, and looking to the future and seeing what's coming down the pike, and think, well, God fixed it, so I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing before. I'm going to go back to Prawn Hub, or I'm going to go back to cheating on my wife, or I'm going to go back to just carousing, drinking, getting high, whatever the case may be. You completely miss the point. You completely miss the mark, and that's not how this works. That's not what we should be doing. We should be anticipating all the good things that are to come. I believe, and I have always believed ever since that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, that God has a plan for Trump. I believe that he caused him to turn his head just enough for a reason. And he has a plan for Trump, and he has a plan for us as well. We have to be ready and willing to carry out that plan. Whatever that plan may be for your life, individually, and whatever the plan might be for the country collectively. I hate the term collectively and collectivism, but in this case, the plan collectively, I believe, is to bring the country back to a place where we revere God, where we respect God, and we respect Christians, and where the people who hate Christians and hate Christianity and hate the Bible, where those people are the exception rather than the rule. And right now, those people are the rule. Those people, the hatred for, and it's not just in this country, it's all over the world. The people who hate Christian and hate Christianity, those people are, right now, I don't know if they're in the majority, but they're a very vocal and active minority. And I believe that the plan for us is to turn that around completely and to make them a very quiet minority. So who's going to join me in trying to make that happen? All right. I want to pivot. I want to pivot to something that, for people who know me, who have followed me for any length of time, know how I feel about, or felt about, the jabs, the so-called vaccines. Operation Warp Speed was one of the things that I really disagreed with Trump on during his first term, because putting together that program and bringing those jabs to market so quickly. Just common sense tells you that there wasn't time to do any real testing. You became the test. You became the clinical trial. And I know people personally who have suffered from some vaccine injuries as a result of being forced, in order to keep their job, being forced to take those jabs. People who were completely healthy their entire lives all of a sudden have one or two, three medical issues that happened right at the time that they got forced to take that jab. And you can't deny, I'm sure you know people who have gotten jabbed and boosted and everything else, and they've had COVID 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Whereas people who chose to be purebloods, people who chose not to get jabbed, they got COVID, haven't had it since. I mean, when we talked about herd immunity during that whole time, they said we were conspiracy theorists. They said we were science deniers. They called us all kinds of names. Yet we're the ones that only had COVID once and maybe not even really had it then. And that's not something I'm going to get into at this right now. But a lot of people believe those tests were fraudulent. So we'll just leave that there. But one of the faces of COVID, one of the scientists who worked on the public policy for COVID and the jabs has been making the rounds recently, and she was on Piers Morgan's show the other day, and she admitted what we all knew all along. She admitted that what we had been saying, that had been labeled as conspiracy theories, were actually true. And I'm talking about Deborah Birx. She was on Piers Morgan's show. Listen to this.
There, that his children were immunized about childhood vaccines.
Yeah.
And what we've done wrong in public health is we didn't explain that COVID vaccines were nothing like the childhood vaccines, and that the childhood vaccines, like many of the diseases, you get it once, you don't get it again. And
they specifically said, and I remember having this conversation with a few people, that the mRNA vaccines were perfectly safe, and the mRNA vaccines were specifically designed to keep you from getting the disease and prevent you from spreading it. And here she's admitting that when we objected to that, we were actually right.
And this is getting the children to have that disease with getting the deadly consequences. That is not what the COVID vaccine is designed to do. It wasn't designed to prevent against infection. And if you look at the vaccine hesitancy rates, they've doubled since COVID. So we have to start addressing these things. You can't just ignore.
And Deborah,
them.
let me ask you, Deborah, I mean, given that you were the face of COVID from the Trump presidency at the time, do you share, this doctor who I was with, do you share the concerns about the longer term negative impact of some of the COVID vaccines?
The messenger RNA vaccine should have been rolled out for the people that were at risk for severe disease, because that's what the vaccine was developed for. But when we say that we're following science and the data, we need to follow the science and the data. And the science and the data said people primarily over 65 or people with significant comorbidities were at risk for severe disease. Those are the individuals that should have been immunized first. And we should have put our science behind our immunization schedule and protected those most at risk. It went into young people in hospitals before it went into our elderly in nursing homes. That is not following the science and the data. So I am all for following the science and the data, but it shouldn't just be a statement, it should be a reality. And when we don't match what we do in public health to the science and the data, that is when we get into trouble. And that's when we start to fracture trust with the American people.
I cannot tell you how many people got so upset with me, even as recently as 6 months ago, because I have problems with the jab. And now, everything that I ever said about it, Dr. Birx is admitting to publicly, throwing Fauci under the bus, which I don't really have a problem with. But at the same time, this is directly contradicting things that she was saying then. And I don't trust her. Obviously, what she's saying right here is accurate, but at the same time, why is she coming out and saying this now? Because people were silenced and deplatformed for saying what she's saying back in 2019 and 2020. So is she trying to get out in front of some sort of legal jeopardy, or I don't know I don't know exactly what she's trying to do here, but and I would like to say that I expect apologies from some of these people who had such bad things to say about me and everyone else who was skeptical about the jab, but that's not going to happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those people, after their sixth booster, ended up with some problems. I don't want that to happen, obviously. I pray that doesn't happen. But I know too many people, and I've read too many stories about people who have had very severe adverse reactions to it because they were not among the cohort of people who were most at risk. Of course, now they're at risk for all kinds of other things, which is unfortunate. Not only is she admitting this, but now there's an actual study that there we go. There's an actual study of a rare syndrome that people are suffering from after being jabbed with these experimental substances. I refuse to call it a vaccine. I use the word when talking, referring to people who do use that word, but you got jabbed with an experimental substance, and now there are consequences, and that is unfortunate, especially for people who were forced to stay in the military or to keep their jobs. It's just sad. And it says here in this story, and this is in the New York Times, but I have this archive in the show notes so you can take a look at it. It says the COVID-19 vaccines, jabs, were powerfully protective, preventing millions of deaths. I don't really believe that. And this is from the New York Times, so you expect this kind of bias. But in a small number of people, and I don't think it's that small a number, the shots may have led to a constellation of side effects that include fatigue, exercise intolerance, brain fog, tinnitus, dizziness, together referred to as post-vaccination syndrome, according to a small new study. And some people with this syndrome appear to show distinct biological changes. Now, I remember when this whole mRNA thing came out, and and people were saying that it changed your DNA and things like that, and I don't know enough about it to be able to say definitively yes, I believe that's true. Um, that's how I lean towards that, but I could be wrong. I'm not a scientist, but I mean, this study right here is saying that it led to biological changes. Do we know if those biological changes were at the DNA level? We don't know. Um, we could read the study and see if we can parse out that information. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't know. But the fact remains that there is a syndrome that people are suffering from as a result of getting jabbed with these experimental substances. And I am accepting apologies. I don't expect any, but I am accepting them because I and a whole host of other people who expressed skepticism at these jabs were right. And one of the faces of the jabs, one of the faces of COVID, is now admitting to it years later. So make of that what you will. And I'm sure there'll be more. I'm sure there'll be more on this as time goes on, and Dr. Burks gets her does more of her appearances and does more of her tap dancing around her role in rolling out the jabs that hurt so many people. But I want to move on. We're running a little bit out of time here. And there's a couple other things I do want to get to real quick. Newly confirmed USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins has, well, she said that they are looking into, the USDA and the president are looking into ways to stop China from purchasing any more farmland. And as we know, they purchase so much farmland very close in very close proximity to a lot of our military installations. And then just the fact that they control this farmland and the food that's produced on these farms. With everything that's going on with our food supply, that has to concern us. We have to be concerned about that. We have to do what we can to mitigate that. And not only should we not allow them to purchase any more farmland, but we need to see what we can do about getting that farmland that they have purchased back from them and have it worked by actual American farmers who will produce quality food and not try to poison us with the junk that I know that these Chinese people are putting in our food that they would never allow in their food supply. So here's praying that Brooke Rollins and Robert Kennedy Jr. that they can get that done, because that would be huge. Between what Kennedy's trying to do with processed foods and making America healthy again, and then getting China out of our farmland. I mean, that could be a game changer. It's not going to happen overnight, obviously, as I made clear in the previous segment. It's not going to happen overnight, but just the fact that it is a possibility and could happen 10, 15, 20 years down the line, we could be a much, much healthier country as a result. All right. One last, a couple of quick things. There have been a few plane crashes in the past few weeks. We had that one in Toronto. And then we just had one the other day, I believe it was yesterday, maybe the day before, in Arizona, where there was a midair collision. And they're trying to blame Trump for this because he fired a bunch of people in the FAA and things like that. He didn't fire any of the air traffic controllers. First of all, he didn't fire anyone having to do with anything related to safety. None of those people lost their jobs. But for the crash in Canada, that was in Canada's airspace, and there was Canadian air traffic controllers dealing with that flight. And I won't even get into the flight crew being all female. That's a whole other issue that I don't really want to get into right now. Don't have time. But it was Canadian air traffic controllers. Trump had nothing to do with that. And the crash that happened in Arizona happened at an uncontrolled airport. There were no air traffic controllers around. In those uncontrolled airports, the pilots of the planes are responsible for making sure that they land and take off safely. And so something happened between those two pilots, whether it's, and we don't know yet. It's still under investigation. It could have been mechanical, could have been pilot error. We don't know. But what we do know is that it had nothing to do with any federal agencies or regulations that Trump implemented or didn't implement. Nothing. But they are still humiliating themselves, trying to blame Trump for this, when he had absolutely nothing to do with it. And it's just, I want them to keep doing it. I want them to keep doing it. Because the more that they double down, triple down, quadruple down on their Trump derangement syndrome, the easier it's going to be for whoever ends up on the conservative side in 28. And I'm all for it. All right, one last quick thing before we get you out of here. There, you know how big a fan I am, how much of an advocate I am for the Second Amendment. And in Kentucky, a few days ago, it might have been a week or so ago at this point, a 14-year-old, two men trying to steal guns from his home. Those two are now deceased. The 14-year-old is alive. He was home by himself when two men broke in. And a call about it received at around 4:30 in the morning. And the kid was home alone. That raises a question, but he's 14, so we don't know what the circumstances are behind that. So I won't really get into that. But he heard people breaking in, found out that they were trying to steal guns out of the safe, and he grabbed one of his father's pistols and shot the intruders. This is a happy story. The kid's alive. The bad guys are not. And the kid gets to live the rest of his life. I'm sure he's going to have some, I don't want issues, but he will have to deal with the fact he took the lives of a couple of bad guys, but at the same time, he also can live the rest of his life knowing that he protected himself and he protected his property. And hopefully, since his father obviously taught him how to handle firearms, his father has obviously taught him how to protect himself, that I suspect he will be all right. All right, y'all. That's all I got for today. I will try to do better the next time. Thank you for tuning in. Please remember to hit that like button, subscribe, share these episodes, because we want to continue to spread the message of Jesus Christ and the message of hope and liberty that he has promised us, because we do want to make sure that we preserve it for future generations, and that future generations don't have to deal with the Christian, anti-Christian hatred and bigotry that is running so rampant right now. We want to make sure we turn that around. So there's that. Also, if you like the shirt I'm wearing, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, head over to missionreadymen.com, shop 7 Armors, and check out the design and all the other cool design that we have that have a message of faith and patriotism. And as always, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.